So, good evening, everyone. Today, we are going to begin with the third session of the research series by IEEE Student Branch VIT Pune. I'm Yash Kai, and Swastik will be answering all your questions in the live chat. So, let's begin. So, today, we are going to look at how do we structure or write a research paper. We'll look at the different components that are included in a research paper. So we'll be focusing on some key components of a well-structured research paper, which is impactful. So whether you're submitting to like IEEE or Springer or any other journal, the core elements of a research paper remain the same. So research paper formats like IEEE, Springer are widely used in engineering and technology fields, and it's important to follow the required guidelines. So in this session, our main focus will be on the general structure, which is applicable across most of the formats. And by the end of the session, you will have a very strong understanding of how to structure a research paper and the best practices for writing one. So we'll begin with the first component of a research paper, that is the title of the research paper. So this is the first chance to make an impression on the reader. So it should be like concise and descriptive. So the title should give a clear idea of what your paper is actually about, and ideally it should be around 12 or 10 words. And when writing your title, you should avoid using overly complex terms and mention simpler terms which will be easier to understand by the readers. And just to give an example, instead of writing the title as a study on networks, the title can be written as optimization of wireless networks for energy efficiency using machine learning. So this title immediately tells the reader what the paper focuses on. So the next section is it mentions the names of the authors. So we mention the list of the names of the authors who have contributed in the research. So the order of authorship is important because it signifies the contribution levels of the authors. So the first author is typically the person who did the most of the work, often the student or researcher who carried out the project, and the last author is usually the principal investigator or supervisor or the person who has a bit lesser contribution, and any co-authors in between are ranked according to their contribution. So this is what I mentioned in general, and in a college, the first author is usually your EDI guide or your CP guide, uh, and followed by the students who are involved in the project. So the next section is of abstract. So the abstract is just a brief summary of your entire paper. So it's meant to provide the readers with a quick overview of what your paper is about. So in IEEE format, the abstract is usually limited to 150 to 250 words. So when you're writing the abstract, we should like make sure to cover the problem that you're addressing, your methodology in short, the key results, and your conclusion. However, avoid using citations or references in the abstract. The section should be able to stand alone and give a full picture of your research, as this will be one of the first things that a reader will read. The next thing is the keywords. So keywords are important for indexing your research paper in research databases. So typically, you'll have to select 3 to 5 keywords that represent the core topics of your research, and you should choose terms that are specific to your work but not too broad. For example, keywords like machine learning, wireless networks, or energy efficiency would be appropriate, but avoid using generic terms or general terms like research or study. So you should avoid using such keywords. The next part is the introduction. So the introduction is where you set the stage for your research. You'll start by giving a broad context and then narrow it down to your specific question or problem. And it's important to clearly define that the problem you are addressing and explain why the problem it's important, and give a brief introduction of the problems or and the methods that you've incorporated in your project. And your introduction should also outline the scope of your paper. So you should make sure to briefly mention what the reader can expect in the rest of the paper. So as you here you can see first we have to mention in general about the research topic, then go a bit go a bit niche into the topic, then highlight the problem, then just mention the solutions and hypotheses that we have looked at uh, in the research paper, and then just give a brief introduction of the methods that you have incorporated in your research work or the research paper that you're trying to write. So just to show you about all the mentioned components, I will show you. So here is one research paper. So as you can see, it has a title. So the title, you can see that the title is Mobile Software Development Kit for Real-Time Multivariate Blood Glucose Prediction. So as you can see, the title is about 10 to 12, is between 10 to 12 words, and it's providing a direct idea of what's included in its research in this research paper. Then the names of the authors are mentioned, most probably in the order of the contribution, or the like measuring, or we can say the order of their importance in the research work that they have done. Then there is the abstract. So this like usually mentions what we are going to look at the research in the research paper, and what has been exactly done by you in your research. So it's a very short intro, kind of brief about your research paper, and like it should be good, as this will be one of the first things that a person will read and then decide whether it's helpful for him or not, and then uh, he might read or not read research paper. So the next important component is the literature review. So the literature review is where you discuss the previous research related to your topic. So this section helps you position your work within the existing body of knowledge. So a good literature review groups similar studies together and then identifies the gaps that your research aims to fill. So to find good research papers, you can use tools like Google Scholar, IEEE Explore, and Springer Link. So using these tools, you can find research paper related to your topic, and then identify the gaps that your research aims to fill, and then also study those research papers. And it's important to cite research papers that are directly related to your research to show that you are building on a strong foundation. So the next part is one of the most important parts, the methodology. So in this section, you mention or explain exactly how you conducted your research or the project that you have done. So this is one of the important part, as it allows other researchers to replicate your study. So in this section, you should mention the details of the project, and it should also include the study design, like how the research was structured. Then it should mention the materials which you have used in the research or the project. Then mention the procedures that you have undertaken during the work. Then mention the tools that you have used throughout. So all these things must be mentioned in the methodology. So just to give an example, if you're working with machine learning models, then you can mention what algorithms you have used, the data sets, and the evaluation methods. So the next part is the results and discussion. So in this section, you present the data that you've collected using tables or graphs or charts to clearly display your results. So you should make sure to label everything properly. Then after presenting the results, you should discuss their implications. Like, did your results confirm your hypothesis that you have made, or like how do they compare with the previous results or the previous research conducted? So this section is where you interpret the data and explain any of your unexpected findings or new findings. So the next section is the conclusion. So in conclusion, we mention a brief summary of what you have found in your research, and you don't just repeat what's already written in the abstract or highlight the key. You just highlight the key takeaways. So this section is also a good place to mention the significance of your findings and why they matter in the broader context of your field. So basically, you should summarize the main findings and then highlight the significance of the research paper or the research you've conducted. Then the next section is of future scope. So after the conclusion, it's a good idea to include a section on the future scope of your research. So this is where you discuss potential directions for your future work, either by you or others in the related field. So you can mention like, are there any, if there are any limitations in your study that could be addressed in the future, or you can mention any new questions that your research or work arises. So this is what you can mention in the future scope. Then comes the acknowledgement. So in acknowledgement, we you can thank anyone who helped you with your research but didn't contribute enough to be an author. So this could include funding bodies or labs that provided materials or colleagues who gave you feedback. Usually, if you are in FI or in any year, so usually we mention the name of the head of department, and we thank the department for providing us the guidance and resources for conducting the research. So the next section is of references. So references are a crucial part of your research paper. So they allow readers to verify your sources and give credit to the prior work. So most formats like IEEE and Springer have specific guidelines for how to list references. So you should make sure that you're consistent with the formatting style required by the journal or conference, to whichever conference you're submitting to. So the references are usually listed at the end of the paper and numbered in the order they appear in the text, or listed alphabetically in some formats that depends on the conference you're submitting to. So here, this references marks the end of the research paper that you're writing, and we'll look at some non-text components that you may or should include in your research paper. Like we may look at the images, so we can include images. So images help us visualize, or we can use it to explain the setup or show equipments, and then explain concepts or illustrate some findings in the research work that you've done. So you should make sure that each image is labeled and has a proper caption. So the next non-text components can be tables. So tables are used for presenting complex data concisely. So tables, you should ensure that tables are numbers and follow specific formatting rules, and ensure that the tables are easy to read and properly formatted. And the next non-text component can be the graphs. So the graphs help you illustrate the trends, then comparisons or patterns. So you should ensure that both the axes are labeled, and then include the units wherever they are necessary. And you should ensure that everything in that graph is clearly mentioned. Another non-text component that we will look at is the formulas. So the formulas may be included if you are using any mathematical formula in your research paper, or like if you're using any mathematical formula to calculate a particular thing in your research work. So you can mention it in your research paper, and you just have to ensure that they are properly formatted and numbered, and they are also referenced in the text. So I will just show you of how these non-text components are used in a research paper. So as you can see here, this is a figure or an image that is added into this research paper. So you can see that this image mentions a caption of what this image is about and what it's representing. So usually we should mention the caption and then properly number the figure. So this is the first figure in the research paper, so its numbering is figure 1. Uh, Also, you should ensure that the figure is properly labeled. As you can see in figure 2, that the figure is properly labeled. So we also took a look at how we can use tables. So we can use tables to represent the data concisely. So here also the table must have a title and the table must be properly numbered. So here this is the first table in the research paper numbered as table 1. So the next component that we looked at was like form the graphs. So in the graphs, basically it's also an image. So it also must have a caption. It also must be numbered, and both the axes of the graphs must be labeled. And you should also mention the units along with it. And the graph should be clear. Like in this graph, we can see that the green line represents the absorbed carbohydrates, and the blue line represents the absorbed insulin. So we also looked at how we can include formulas in our research paper. So we can also include formulas in our research paper and then properly number it, and we can also reference it into the text. So this is how we mention formulas, tables, and graphs and images in our research paper. So we also looked at how do we mention the methodology. Uh, then we also looked at the results and discussions. We also looked, so every, as I mentioned earlier, that every conference has a different format. So in some conferences, the each section might have different but somewhat similar name, and um, there might be different sections for results and discussions. As in this research paper, there are separate sections for the results and discussion. Then we looked at the conclusion, and then we also looked at the references that have been made throughout this research paper. So usually after references, we do not mention anything further, and it marks the end of the research paper. So so that was it for today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. I will try to answer those. Okay, so the formula, if you're like, it depends on the editor that you're using. In Word, we can create, it has an option to specifically create formulas. You can look into it. Yes, we will share the resources on the IEEE group. So, if you have any questions, you, you can put them into the chat. I will answer the questions. So, uh, basically, in this session, we looked at. So, just to wrap up, in this session, we have covered the essential components of a research paper, from the title to the references. So, along with some tips on handling the non-text elements. So, just following this general structure that we have discussed in this session will help you ensure that your paper is clear, concise, and well organized. So, although different journals and conferences have their own formatting requirements, but the structure that we have covered today is the foundation of any research paper that you will incur. So, if you are unsure of the specifics, so you can always refer to the author guidelines provided by the journal or the conference that you're trying to submit to. So when will we get? You will get the certificates after all the sessions are covered. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you're all like you can always put them in the group that you have created. So I guess there won't be any more questions. So if possible, can you you can look. Uh, uh, Basically, general question which many students have in first year is that uh, what should be the correct order of the authors. So as there are multiple members in the group, so usually the first author is of course the EDI guide or project guide, and then followed by the group leader, then the co-leader, and then other members which are usually placed according to their contribution. Okay, uh, so thank you for attending today's session. I guess this marks the end of today's session. If you have any further questions, you're always welcome to ask them on the IEEE's research sessions group. Your all the queries related to research sessions will be answered there.